Oh, there we go. I'm unmuted. All right. Two things. A bridge that is approximately 12 minutes from my house has collapsed. And I just got back from being away for a week. And we got plenty to talk about with the Crocus City Hall attack. Let's talk. Hello. Okay, I'm unmuted now. Great. Johnny Yuma says this is an unusual schedule. Yeah, I was away for the last several days. Took a lightweight spring vacation out of town. I'm back, and interestingly enough, the day I left, something unthinkable happened. I was at the airport, and I looked at my phone, and I'm like, "Holy moly! A bridge has collapsed. It is the Francis Scott Key Bridge, which is 12 minutes from my house. 12 minutes. That's how long it takes to go to the Francis Scott Key Bridge. I'll talk about it a little while, um, and tell you a little bit about my. Interestingly enough, I've said many times on the show. A lot of people know my dad was a longshoreman. My dad worked at the docks loading and unloading ships. So I've been to the docks many times with my dad. Back then, they didn't have all of the security like they could. My dad, he took me to the hiring hall. That's where he would go to get his check when I was little and all that kind of stuff and find out what work was there. So I've been there many times. And of course, sorry about that. I did search and rescue on the bay for many, many years. That's one of my part of my background. Worked with the Coast Guard, worked with a lot of different agencies doing search and rescue on the bay. And of course, I fished around that. I'm an avid fisherman. I fished around that area a lot last summer. The stripers, the rockfish, the Maryland state fish is the striped bass or rockfish. They were really a lot of schools of them, a lot of really nice fish around there last summer. So I fished the Bay Bridge, and from like the creek over by where I live to run out there is just no time. To leave from the creek to get out to the Key Bridge is right around the corner. But it's like I would say 10 or 15 minutes, 10, maybe 15 max, running along at an average speed on the boat. So it's like right around the corner. Anyway, so I know the area pretty well. And I even had a couple people like send messages asking me, was I okay? And did I get mushed or something? And no, I was just out of town taking a little vacation. I can tell you a couple things about that. Number one, for those people who are asking about, oh, is there any possibility, that something's weird about that? Well, a couple of things. If you understand the size of those ships, and I do, because I used to walk alongside of them. I've been up on a few of them with my dad, some of the drive-ons. These things are huge. That one of those things hit a bridge, it's going down. Those things are big, so huge. It's like a city. These things are like a city. If they hit the side of a bridge, there ain't no cheating. They don't have to do anything. That bridge is gonna collapse. Those friggin' ships are gigantic. Of course, you probably know by now the ship seems to have lost power. I have heard that when the ship was at the dock, that there had been some reports of the ship having issues with power before it left the dock. I don't know if that was documented. Who runs the ship? Well, in the Chesapeake Bay, one of the things that has to happen, you have a licensed captain for the Chesapeake Bay. So let's say you got a ship. When you get to the bay, you have to bring a captain from the Chesapeake Bay Pilots Association, is brought out to your ship. That guy goes to the ship. He goes to the helm. He pilots that ship up the bay, in the bay, out. So you're going to have a professional pilot doing that. Apparently, it lost power. A lot of people say, look, I saw a lot of smoke coming out of that. Well, what happens oftentimes is when those ships start, they're gigantic diesel engines. They got to pump a lot of this big plume of air has to go through the ship to build the compression to start the ship, these gigantic ship engines. So they'll put out a big puff of smoke. So it's if you ever see somebody when they have to start those ships or get those motors going, they'll put out a huge thing of black diesel smoke. The old ones ran on this oil called bunker C, this thick oil. But at any rate, one of the things that is discussed is throwing the anchor. Now, what people think about is there was a movie called Battleship or something where, they're moving this battleship and they wanted it to turn or something and they threw the anchor and the anchor caught and this ship just came around. Now, that ain't the way it works on those big ships. No, you throw those giant anchors, but the anchor's not going to stop one of those ships from moving. It may slow it up. The ships, they have a lot of if you ever run boats, I've been around boats all my life. If you're ever running a boat, the bigger the boat is, one of the things you got to understand about a boat is the side of the damn big boat catches a lot of wind. It's like a sail and it'll push the boat sideways. So if you're going along, if there's on a boat that size, as much side that you have on that boat, right? As much space as you have on that boat. When they're coming out, anyway, they got a side wind. Even if they're right in the middle of the channel going straight, if there's a side wind, it's going to take that gigantic boat right off course immediately, any wind to the side, right? If you look at the pictures, you can if you look at that black smoke coming up real close, you'll see it kind of going sideways. I think they had some wind that night. I think they had some tide. Also, keep in mind one other thing, depending upon if you've got a boat, if people who know boats, depending on whether you got right hand or left hand screws, your props. When you give a boat hard reverse, right, depending on whether your screws are right-handed or left-handed, it will lurch the boat to the left or lurch it to the right. So if you jam her into full reverse and it has right-hand screws, it's going to, you ever see somebody punch a car and the car just kind of twists, right? That torque twists the car. It'll do that to a boat. And if you give her hard reverse, oftentimes it'll pull it off to the side. So if you're trying to go straight and you give that boat, you're running a regular boat and you give it hard reverse, it could give you the opposite of what you want. If you want to maintain straight course and speed, you want to keep those rudders straight, right? If you give it hard reverse, it could yank it off to the side and make your course go even, on any boat, make your course even worse. And with a boat like that, they had no time. I think they had 90 seconds or something like that. They lost power. They tried to get power. They lost power. At that point, she was drifting out of the channel. Apparently, they tried to drop anchor. That anchor ain't stopping that boat. It's going to slow it up. Even if that boat hits that thing at 5 knots. I forgot what they were going, 8 knots, something like that, whatever. But whatever. I don't care what that boat's going. As big as that is, when that hit the pylons on that bridge, that thing's going down like a piece of paper. It is a piece of paper. It is like a tractor trailer hitting a mosquito for that damn boat to hit that ship. That ship to hit that bridge. So it's interesting. The bridge, it was really high. I think it was about 185 feet. Same, actually 4 feet higher than the Chesapeake Bay Bridge. The Chesapeake Bay Bridge is just like 3.5 miles wide. That's 181. I think it's a center span, pretty high. The QE2 comes under these ships. These are made, the tall ships, those tall ships from around the world. They'll come into the Baltimore Harbor. They will come under, the Bay Bridge. They'll come under the Key Bridge. These are really, really high bridges. So it's not a matter of the height. You could stack that damn ship on top. That you could take that ship and damn near stack another one on top of it just as high, and it'll probably still go under there. The height was not the issue. Loss of power, loss of steering, and see ya. No chance of that. So they got a real difficult time. A buddy of mine was over there the other day trying to get some video. He got me some video, actually. But what he said was, and this was before I got back today. He said that there was literally some guy charging $40, literally $40 for people to go, because he had the back of his backyard was a really, really good spot for people to get pictures and video. And he had a bunch of people in his backyard. They're paying $40. He said some guy gave him $100. The guy was a journalist or whatever and said, hey, I want to be here all day to get a lot of pictures. He had these really heavy zoom, really powerful zoom lenses. The guy gave him $100. So this guy's, you got people making money right now, just charging people for, allowing people to, get a good vantage point to take pictures. That's basically like so many other cities. You have a loop that goes around the city, right? You have like, a loop that, beltway that goes around the city, and this is part of the beltway 695, but there are other ways to go through. You've got two other tunnels. You've got the harbor tunnel, and I forgot what the other tunnels called, but you got two other tunnels going right through, and then you've got the loop going around. So there's some other ways to get through the city, but anyway you look at it, it's going to jam traffic up pretty bad, jam traffic up on 695. I've talked to some friends of mine who are out there on the doing, on scene, getting, working with people that are figuring out what they're going to do. No easy task, because keep in mind something. Look, you got gigantic things that are 100 tons, right? Okay, let's say you start cutting and this thing shifts and falls on top of you and kills everybody. You got a boat. You got a big old long giant boat, right? And you're working out and you got divers and people and all of this, and you cut some beams that are, hundreds of tons of steel, and you cut these things and they're connected to concrete, right? Hundreds and hundreds of tons. You cut them and a whole big section shifts, splash. It can take your boat out. It can kill all the divers. This is really exceptionally, unthinkably dangerous work. Think about that. You got something that's leaning like this. As an example, you ever like walk through the woods? When I was a kid, we'd go walking through the trails in the woods. And my sister used to drive me crazy, because one of the things she was famous for doing is she'd walk by in front of you, and she'd like take a limb and bend it forward and then let go. And then it comes by and the limb, whap, gets you in the face, right? I always get burned up. But bottom line is, some of these things have stress on them, right? And they're pulling real hard, little do you know. And you start cutting these things with torches, right? And you got two pieces of metal pulling different ways, and it's each hundreds of tons. And you cut through them and they go, when it finally get enough that they can break, they go, whoo. And this gigantic piece of metal goes flying maybe 100 feet this way, 100 feet that way. And it releases some gigantic multi-hundred ton pieces of the road surface that just drop. And you got hot divers down there under that. Right, this can kill a lot of people can get killed in a hurry playing with this damn thing. So they got a nasty job on their hands. Best of luck to them. I wouldn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. I wouldn't want to be. They couldn't pay me enough money to work on that cleanup effort, because you're gonna have to cut steel with torches. Some of that stuff's gonna have to be hand cut. I guess a lot of it with torches. And think about it. You got pieces of road, asphalt, steel. The actual road is like land on top of something that's laying on top of something in the water. And if you cut the bottom thing, the whole thing shifts, boom, and crushes and kills anything in its way. It is nasty, nasty, nasty. How long? I've heard anywhere from weeks to months to get it cleaned up. It's going to be a while. It is really, really bad news. I don't, people are saying, oh, it was some kind of a pre-planned, somebody. When I look at it, based on my experience, based on what I've saw, right, based on my experience on the water operating boats all my life, based on my experience doing search and rescue on the bay for many, many years and understanding how boats work, that boat, I think it was an accident. Now, that isn't saying, here's what I would have to say though, based on something that I've heard. Now, I've heard that they did have some problems with this thing losing power, cutting out while it was at the dock. Did they advise the pilot? Because I don't know that the pilot would have left the dock if he knew that. People talk about tugs. Generally, I've watched boats pull away from the, big ships like that, pull away from the dock. And what happened, what you'll see is a couple of tugs, 2 or 3 tugs will connect to it. They'll pull it away from the dock and get it straight. Then it'll engage. Sometimes they'll pull it out, pull it away from the dock, get it straight. It'll engage, boom, and off it goes. Usually the tugs let go. It's not going to have tugs. It's basically you're in the main channel of the river, heading out of the river. So you're not going to have tugs tied off for the most part. Sometimes they could accompany it or something like that. Mostly not. But even if there were tugs there, there would have been nothing they could have did. If there was tugs there, there'd have been nothing they could have done with this damn boat moving, nothing. A tug hook up to that thing and try to pull. First of all, 90 seconds isn't enough time to do anything. Secondly, it would drag that tug backwards underwater in the blink of an eye. It would drag a big old tug. That shit would drag it backwards underwater in a second. So bottom line is, based on what I saw, um, I think it was a horrible accident, incident. The ship lost power. They lost rudder steerage. They didn't have, a crew back there like, say, the Navy ships have. They'll have a crew back there that can steer um, manually. And when they lost power, but you're not going to have that on commercial shipping. And see, if a boat, especially a big boat like that, when a boat's moving through the water, right? If it's so, this boat's moving through the water because a water is flowing over the rudders. That's where you get your steerage. You can still steer it. If you're moving forward, you can still, oftentimes steer it. But the problem is if they lost power, let's say you lose engine, but you still have electricity, you still have power, you don't have forward drive, your prop falls off or something like that, right? Whatever, right? Because you're moving, your props, right? I mean, your rudders can still steer the boat because water's flowing over, right? So you could still keep your nose and make it through the bridge. But if you lose power, now you're going to turn that wheel, they ain't going to do nothing. And just think about this. If you're turning your rudder and you're manipulating it and you lose power, wherever that rudder is stopped is where it's going to turn. If it's a little off, it's going to keep turning in that direction. And even if you get power back, it takes, when you turn, especially on a big boat like that, if you ever know about steering a boat, when you turn a boat, one of the things that happens when people first learn, and I've taught people how to run, I've taught seamanship and navigation, I've trained people who were for search and rescue, right? And one of the things you'll find when people first start running a boat is this: they turn it all the way, their wheel all the way to port, right? I remember port's on your left hand side. You drink port wine with your left hand. That's how you remember that, right? Port is on the left, starboard's on the right. So you got all the way hard to port, right? So people turn hard to port all the way over, and then the boat will start coming way over, and then they'll turn it all the way right, and then next thing you know, it'll start. And you'll find people when they first start running a boat, they'll take the nose way over here, and then the bows away, and they'll go back and forth. And after a while, they'll learn you have to feel it. You turn a little bit, you let it come, you turn it back. But while it's still going this way, you're going to turn your wheel back and straighten it out, and you get to the point where you get to feel with that, and then it gets to the point where you're crisp and you can run a boat without going all the way over here and all the way back. Because when you turn and when you come back, it takes a while. There's a hesitancy, there's a latency period between when you turn it and as it slowly starts to come back. Well, the bigger the boat, the longer it takes to go this way or that way or come back. So as close as they were to the harbor, to that, what they would have had to do if they'd have got power, the truth is, here's what you got to understand about a boat. If they'd have got power running a boat, right, what they would have wanted to do is gas it. What they would want to do, if I'm running that boat, that ship, I couldn't run anything that big, right? I've run some big boats, but not ships, right? Literally. You're running a boat, right? If that boat starts going bad and you want to correct it, you're going to give it the gas, right? You're not in a car. What you think of is back off of your gas and hit the brakes. In a boat, a jet ski, something like that, it's the opposite, or personal watercraft. It's the opposite. You want to give it gas because you want more water flowing over that rudder and you want it to push and drive. So what they would have done if they could have got power is they'd have turned their nose. They would have turned and they would have gassed it. They would have gave her the horsepower, right? And that's going to drive the nose back around really hard. So if they could have got power, interesting, people would think you want to give it full reverse. Just the opposite. You're going to gas that sucker. You're going to turn the wheel and you're going to let it boom that, and then you're going to try to gas it even more and straighten it back out. So you kind of wiggle out the bridge a little bit. At any rate, they didn't have power. They were in no position to do that. You couldn't set something up like that if you wanted to. You couldn't, because it would have been where they are now. The ships aground. It's about 50 around 50 to 55 feet in the center channel there. When you go under the bridge, and a boat like that, when they go out of the channel a little teeny bit, they're going to run hard aground. That boat is hard aground now. That boat, that ship is hard aground, and it's got heavy stuff on top of it that's pushing it even harder into the ground. It ain't gonna be easy to get that sucker off. But at any rate, so that's my thoughts on that. They're very fortunate that few, not few, that not a lot of people died. It could have been really, really terrible. But so that's as best I can say. How long before ships are coming in and out of the harbor? Some people say a few weeks. I think it's gonna be a long time, unless they can perform some kind of miracle, because that's dangerous. They can lose a lot of people, can get killed doing that. Think of the stress. Think of, you got two pieces of steel like this, and they're pulling, and this weight is dragging down like that, right? You got something hundreds and hundreds of tons dragging down that way. If you've ever cut a tree, right? You ever cut down a tree with a saw, and you're like, it's pulling, and you cut it, and all of a sudden it pops. Woof! Imagine that with hundreds of tons of steel. Anything around there that it hits, man, it's crushed, blown to pieces, torn up, dead. And then all kind of stuff can drop over on other boats, on divers. Just not pleasant jobs they got coming up there doing that. I don't know how the hell they're going to take some. So it's going to take major engineers to figure out how to take that thing to pieces. Someone says strange chemical trains crash, and this one in the sea. Yup, accidents. I understand. Based on everything that has happened through COVID, et cetera, people who think, oh yeah, this was something, it wasn't an accident. But if you look at what happened, I don't see how you could do that. I don't see how you could pull that off. First of all, even if you've had some way to make the ship lose power, there ain't no guarantee that it would do anything. That it would the most likelihood is, where that boat was, the greatest likelihood is that it's just going to go out of the channel and run aground. It's not much of a likelihood that it's going to go out at the last second and hit the bridge. The great likelihood is that he's going to go through the bridge because it's pretty wide there, or it's going to run aground before it hits the bridge. And as an example, it's hard aground right now. When it looks to me like where it hit out of the channel, where it hit, it was running aground at the time it hit. And if it had been a little bit shorter, it would have run hard aground. It wouldn't have hit. So I'm not adding that to any other chemical train. I'm just saying, based on what I saw, based on what I believe, I think it was a real, genuine accident, incident, etc. But people can believe whatever they want. I don't know. It doesn't matter to me. It is what it is. What I believe and what you believe doesn't matter. It is what it is, right? And so we'll find out. Now let's move on to something that I do think that something's rotten and stinking Denmark. Let's move on to the Crocus attack, right? A couple of things going on here. If you think about these kinds of things that happened, not to go too deep into this, but the reality is the fact that the U.S. had said a few weeks earlier they were concerned that there would be attacks, a terrorist attack on concerts, malls, public places. Imagine that somebody says, hey, Garland, watch it, because I think it's possible that somebody might tear into your shed and steal your lawnmower. What makes you think that? Oh, man, it could happen. I don't know. Just keep an eye out. Somebody put something out around the community. Hey, it's possible. There's rumors going around that some sheds might be torn open, lawnmowers could be stolen, and dogs could be beaten to death with a cinder block. And you come home, you walk in there, and it doesn't happen. Oh, okay, well, I guess everything's okay. And you come home a couple weeks later, and there's your dog dead, and somebody hit him in the head with a cinder block. You walk around back, your shed's torn open, your lawnmower's gone. You're like, perhaps I better go to talk about this guy who said he'd heard a rumor that dogs were being beaten to death with cinder blocks and lawnmowers were being stolen out of people's sheds. Hey, dude, what happened? I don't know. They'll know a thing. But aren't you the one that said that everybody in the community should hide their dog, make sure there's no cinder blocks around, and watch your lawnmower because it might be stolen out of the shed? Yep. And then you say, well, that happened to me. Well, I'll tell you this. A, I know exactly who did it, and B, I know exactly who didn't do it. So you predicted what was going to happen. where it was going to happen, how it was going to happen. You know who did it, and you know who didn't do it. Or at least you're saying you know who did it, and you say you know who didn't do it. But you have no connection whatsoever to the crime. You knew everything about the crime, and now you can tell me beyond a reason. Hey, somebody. Guess what, Bill? What? Somebody hit my dog in the head with a exactly as you predicted a couple weeks ago. Somebody hit my dog in the head with a cinder block, killed poor old Sparky, and they stole my lawnmower right out of the shed, just like you predicted. What do you think about that? Well, I know it wasn't Tom up the street. Really? Anything else? It was Bill down the street. Were you involved in any way? No. I'm just saying, I know it wasn't Tom. He had nothing to do with it. In fact, it was Bill. I'll tell you beyond a reasonable doubt. So you predicted it. What was going to happen? Where it was going to happen? How it was going to happen? And now that it happened, you know who did it and you know who didn't do it. At least you're telling me you know who did it and you're telling me you know who didn't do it. But you have no connection to the criminal activity? That seems to stretch the imagination a little bit, wouldn't you say? Don't you think? My dog's dead. My lawnmower's gone. I loved poor old Sparky. I had him for years. I took him for a walk every morning, and now he's dead. My family's heart's broken. My poor old doggy is gone to the great doggy heaven. And you know everything about the crime, but you weren't involved in any way. Now, that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, does it? Based on that evidence right there, you would have to suspect that whoever it is who's made these mini prediction and who now immediately after the crime happened immediately said, I know both who did it and I know who didn't do it. Even though you look at it and you say, well, I don't believe either one of those, but I find it interesting that you're immediately after the crime happens taking a position. I'm still investigating the crime. I'm barely cleaning up my poor old dog, consoling the family about the loss of Sparky, looking on line because my grass needs cutting, calling somebody to come cut the grass as the kids are crying over Sparky being gone. You know everything about it, and I don't even know yet, but you weren't involved in any way. Yeah, that's a little hard to believe. That was a little hard to stomach, isn't it? It seems to make sense to me that as soon as it happened, at the very beginning, what did I say? For those who watched it, and Scott Ritter said something similar. He wrote an article about when people commit a crime, when special ops guys are caught behind enemy lines, they go to their true north, right? They go to where they feel comfortable. And I said, look, if you're chasing a criminal, some guy's murdered 10 people and he takes off in a car and he's running, right? And you're chasing him. Go have some people wait where his home is. They're going to their home, their mother's house, something like that. That's where they're going. People are going. It is an instinctive move. It's not a rational, intellectual move. It's an instinctive move. They're dealing with fear and they're going to where they'll feel safe and comfortable. They're looking for a place where they think emotionally they'll feel safe and comfortable, right? So they're probably going to run and get in their car and head towards their home or whatever. Maybe their girlfriend's home, maybe their mother's house. Most likely their home or mom's house, right? Depending on their relationship with their mother. But that's a whole nother story. So these guys commit the crime. Of course, as soon as it's over, the United States is telling us who did and didn't do it. And interestingly enough, the people who did and didn't do it works really well if that were true, would work really well for the neocon narrative. Couldn't possibly be Ukraine. Certainly, we know they've never been involved in any terrorism, right? It's not Ukraine. And these guys are making a beeline for Ukraine. Why? This is obvious. This one's kind of obvious, isn't it? Why would they be going to Ukraine? I didn't need to be a member of the FSB. I didn't need to have all of this data and information about their cell phones. I didn't need any of that. All I had to do was look at a map. They're leaving Moscow. They're making a beeline for Kiev, heading straight, dead line for Kiev, right? I can tell you where they're going based on they're going in a straight line. If you go in a straight line, you can take a map and you can take a compass and all that and just draw a straight line and you can see exactly where they're, right down the line. They're either going here, or here, but you can see the line. You can follow them, right? They were going back to Ukraine, which tells me that whatever happened, this operation originated in Ukraine. Simple as that. They were going where they were comfortable, and they were going where there had been, they believed, some prearrangement to get them to safety, right? And my opinion is there was a prearrangement to put a bullet in their head when they got back to Ukraine. Whoever was supposed to pay them would pay them off with gunpowder. Those guys were going to get back to Ukraine. They were going to put bullets in them and dispose of all of their bodies. And then I've never seen, they don't know anything. No, we haven't seen them. They're gone, right? They were going to get Skripal. That's what they were going to get. Have you heard from Yulia and Sergei Skripal? Well, these guys were going to be hanging out with Sergei and Yulia Skripal, unfortunately. They were going to meet an untimely demise in Ukraine. And so I think what we're looking at is an operation. Was U.S. intel involved? It's possible. Was UK intel involved? It's possible. You could probably argue likely, maybe so, maybe not. Keep in mind something to understand about the intelligence and the operation, and about the U.S. empire. There are competing factions. And so it doesn't mean that Joe Biden knew what was going on. It doesn't mean that, or he didn't. It doesn't mean that Newland, or it doesn't mean that Blinken was involved. It doesn't mean that he wasn't involved. There could be various factions who were in the intelligence who said, let's get this done. And they may not have been involved, and they may not have told the people at the top, or they may have. I'm not saying they did or didn't. Don't think that it has to have been straight down from Biden or straight down from Rishi Sunak or whoever like that. Because let's face it, if you really understand the way power works around these parts, they don't have any power. They're not the people of power. They are puppets. They are the illusion of power. So don't think that Joe Biden or Sunak or one of these schlumps is Olaf Scholz, right? We've already heard German generals talk about carrying out operations basically that went against what Scholz wanted, and apparently they weren't going to tell them. So that should be enough to give you a hint that there are intelligence operations going on that the so-called fake illusionary leaders of these countries don't know about, because they're not the leaders of these countries. They're puppets put in position to give the illusion to the voters that they voted someone into power, or in Rishi Sunak's case, not so much. But you know what I'm getting at, right? So these guys were nabbed by the FSB, and there's big problems from this, because the FSB now, my understanding is they have their phones, which, man, you can do a lot of tracing with networks. And one of the things you can do, let me give you an example. Back when I worked with, I did some security. I was trained, believe it or not. I've often told people, for God's sake, I could be a spy myself. I'm not. God knows I got another story to tell you. I think they're accusing me of being a foreign agent or something. Darn it, if this thing doesn't stop ringing. But, but now this was back in 2005, 4, 5, something like that. I worked with the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force for a year. I was trained on some terrorism crap. I changed by the DTRA, the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, under the which comes under the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And my job was, I was trained in identifying threats from terrorism, right? Little did I know that I was working for the terrorists at the time, but at any rate, and mitigating those threats from terrorism, right? And at that time, there was something called a batteries out conversation. What did that mean? Back then, you could still take the batteries in and out of your phone. And I should have took the battery out of this one. It wouldn't be ringing the whole show. And I'm going somewhere with this regarding the Crocus thing. Okay. What's a batteries out conversation? The only way that you can assure that the battery, which your battery is, what is it? It is a little microphone in here, ain't it? And it's, oh my God, it's got cameras. Right? The only way you can ensure that somebody has not hacked into those cameras and microphone, or that the person who's using it is not using them against you, is to take the batteries out. And so everybody has to set their phone on the table, battery beside it, batteries out conversation, or they got to be locked up in a cell in the other room before you come in the room, right? Why? Because one of the things they could do would be people can do is upload a program to your phone. And this program simply records everything, video and audio, at all time, and forwards it to somewhere. And what it'll do is, so it doesn't tie up your network. And every time you're trying to get out, just think about it. If you've got a phone and you're trying to get out and the internet's slow all the time, you'll realize somebody's in my phone and it's transmitting data. And then so you will act on that. What they'll do is it'll wait till like 2 o'clock in the morning, and then it'll transmit it all when it's not being used. When you're asleep, it'll transmit it all then, so you don't notice. But they upload an application to your phone, and basically what it does, it just records everything all the time and sends it to them. And when you turn your phone off, it ain't turned off. It goes through the sequence to appear to be turned off. It's never turned off. It is always on. It is always recording everything and sending it up, right? So what I'm saying is this: they could do that back in 2005, 6, 7, long before then, I'm sure, but when I knew about it. So I will guarantee what the Russians are doing, since they had some understanding of phones and some access to phones. There's a whole lot of people that see, you're hearing about the people they're nabbing. You ain't hearing about the people that they aren't nabbing, right? They're the people that they're getting. They're grabbing people. They bring them in. There's discussion. They're interviewing them and things of that nature. But there's a whole lot of people that you get very very valuable information from. And so instead of bringing the person in, what you want to do with this person is just get in their phone and then just everything they do. And so now you're compiling data. You have a steady stream of information coming in from this person, and you can use that information to continue to expand your network of understanding, to expand your investigation, to take it further and further. So my point is this: the Russians know a lot. They know a lot, man. They know a lot of what's going on here. They know a whole lot of what's going on here. And I think this is going to get them to the bottom of a whole lot of other stuff. I would suspect, if you ask me, that there are some intelligence agencies involved. Now, I'm not going to discount one possibility. This could be the Ukrainian intel, and it doesn't mean the Ukrainian intel could have done it without telling CIA, MI6, etc. That is possible. I don't know if it's more likely than not. I'm not going to say that I have no clue, but it is possible that this could be Ukrainian intelligence alone. It is possible that it could be a collaboration between Ukrainian intelligence, UK, CIA, etc. I don't know, whatever the deal, right? But I will say this: the Russians know a lot and are going to continue to know. Right. One of the interesting things I think that the Russians are doing, they're playing a chess game, because apparently now this is a pretty slick move. So apparently they got a list of some names that they're giving to the Kiev regime, and they're saying these people were involved in the attack. We would like you to send us those people. Now that it creates, a bit of a conundrum for the Kiev regime, because the Kiev regime, if they say, sure, here they are, well, then, you give them up, which would be the smart thing to do, but they can't really do that because their hands are probably dirty. If they say, no, we're not giving them up, well, then the Russians are going to say, well, clearly you're involved because this is an international terrorist action. It's been condemned by the UN. It's been condemned by your allies. It's been condemned by the United States, the UK officially, whether they were involved or not, they officially condemned it. So they all officially condemned it, and now you won't give us the people, right? So you're dirty, and now you're kind of exposing them to the world. They can't give up the people because the people will rat them out. They can't not give up the people, because if they don't give up the people, then it becomes obvious that they were involved. So it's a beautiful conundrum. I used to love to do that kind of stuff in investigations. Love to create a catch-22 situation. Like when you're investigating a guy. And the guy said, and you say, where were you at 4:30? I was coming out of the movies at 4:30. Interesting. Which movies? The one over 12th and Elm. 12th and Elm, 4:30. Yeah. Did you see that big accident in front of the movies? I think it was a fatal. I think 2 people got killed on a motorcycle. Did you see that one? You just created a conundrum. You just created a difficult situation for that person, right? Because the person now doesn't know whether there was an accident. Are you making that up? If the guy says, yeah, I saw the accident, and you say, oh, interesting, but there was no accident. But you don't say to him, there wasn't an accident, you're caught. You just say, oh, okay, interesting. And you continue you may at some point, if it benefits you, do that. But right now, you're not going to do it. You're going to say, oh, okay, you saw the lights and all that. I think they landed a helicopter. Were you there when the helicopter landed? Oh, yeah, now knowing that nothing happened. So you're going to get him to elaborate on the story. And then at some point, you may come back to him and say, okay, so 4:30 when the murder happened, you were over there in front of checked out the accident helicopter. Yeah, there was no accident, no helicopter landed. I made that up. You may come to a point where you'll say that, right? You create that kind of a difficult situation because what you're really looking for, actually, what you're really looking for is not the person's answer. What you're really looking for as an investigator, when you say, okay, we're there, well, did you see the accident? You're looking for hesitation. Because the guy, if he wasn't there, he's got to stop and make a decision. Do I say I saw the accident? Do I say I didn't see the accident? And if there was an accident and I say I didn't see it, the guy's going to say, oh, well, let me show you right here in the news. It was all over the news. And if it's the opposite, then the guy's going to say, you're saying you saw an accident, but there was no accident. I'm in a world of trouble, right? So what is the person going to do? They're going to hesitate. Did you see the accident? They're going to go, who, me? Yeah, you. What did you say? 4:30? Now you're going to see. Now they're looking for time. They're telling you that they're lying now, right? So you create a situation where they got to think, right? So now you put you've created that conundrum for Ukraine. Hey, looks like everybody condemned these guys. They're in Ukraine. Give up these guys right here. Now, Ukraine's got to think, do I give them up? If I don't give them up, this happens. If I don't, you've created a difficult situation for. That's one of the things you want to do as an investigator. So that's good work there by the Russians. Beautiful, beautiful work. And let's see how the Ukrainians respond to that. My suspicion, well, no suspicion, they can't give any people up. If there really are people, there probably are. They can't give anybody up because they're protecting them. These guys were going to Ukraine because they knew they would be protected in Ukraine. And add this. A good lawyer never asks a question he don't know the answer to. So any questions that the Russians are asking, most likely they already know the answers. When they ask questions, when they put out questions out into the media, etc., they already know the answer. They're looking for how people are going to respond. You want to ask a question that you already know the answer, right? Think about that. Did you see that accident in front of the movies at 4:30? You already know the answer. The answer is you couldn't have saw it because I just made that up. I wouldn't ask that if I didn't know whether or not there was an accident. I would ask that because I already know the answer to that question. So it's not a question. It's a conundrum for you, my friend. And I'm in the driver's seat. And the Russians are playing that game with the Ukrainians. I think that's a beautiful move to say, we got some names and you're going to give them up. Or give them up and make them say no. And now the world looks at them and says, won't give up terrorists, huh? How you going to get your way out of that one? Yeah, it looks like you're involved. So we'll see. Now, there are people saying, well, what happens if the Russians find out that the CIA was involved and that MI6 was involved? Are they going to start firing missiles at the U.S., firing missiles at... No, they're not. Understand something about the Russians. I understand the Russian way of thinking, the way of doing war. I understand the Russian culture. Very, very, very mechanical and methodical, right? The Russian general staff has already come up with the things that they want to do, how they want to do it, any contingency plans. If this goes wrong, we'll do this. If this goes right, we'll do that. They got plans. And when it comes to the how they're going to prosecute the war in Ukraine, they got a plan, and they ain't going to screw it up because of a terrorist attack. And they're winning. You know, the other side wants them to do something stupid. They're winning. The other side wants them to escalate in a way that will give the other side something it wants. So let's just say Ukraine or MI6 or whatever wants to drag NATO into it. They're going to try to bait the Russians into doing something that'll drive NATO into it. Now, the Russian people want blood. The Russians will just slam some more, put some more Ukrainians in the dark, maybe hit some of their water stuff. They'll hit some vital infrastructure and make their lives a living hell. But what they're not going to do, I don't think, is just go around and start throwing missiles at Poland and in Europe and all over creation. They're not going to do anything stupid. They're winning. They have a winning formula. I do not believe the Russians are going to move away from their winning formula. I think they understand that the track that they're on is a track that leads to victory, and that the only hope for the Ukrainians or MI6 or whoever the hell is to get them to make a left turn or a right turn. They're on a track that's winning. They ain't going to do it. They ain't going to move. Like I said, could there be some hits on some people? Could some people disappear? Yeah. Some people can and probably will disappear. Could there be, I understand there was some strikes on some NATO underground meeting places and some NATO military people, maybe even high-ranking people, met an untimely demise. I think you'll see those kinds of things. You'll CIA bases hit, different things like that. I think you'll see them take actions that the West knows what they're doing, but they can't come out and say we had a bunch of NATO officers that were in Ukraine and they were working with the Ukrainians and they all got hit by a Kinzhal missile and killed. They just can't come out and say that to their people. So, but I think the Russians will take the action in their own due time. As Iran says, they'll act when it is most beneficial for them in a way that's most beneficial for them. But I don't think they're going to do something. They're not going to take the bait in the trap and do something that would be that would hurt their overall plan, because their plan is working. One of the reasons that this kind of terror attack happens, one of the reasons that they do this thing is simply because because the Russians are winning. They're winning. And these, I think, are things they're trying to do to debate them into taking a different course, doing something more dramatic, doing something that will upset the people, the people in the countries of the who were involved in the origin of this incident, and hopefully they can get the people in the countries to back some kind of a NATO intervention, which will then go to all bloody hell. But add this. But NATO does not have the military capacity at this time to intervene in a way that's very successful. So we'll see what happens. But I think you'll see more missile attacks, more bombing attacks. I also think one of the real areas of change will be the plan for the outcome of a Russian victory. They'll look at it, and where they may have said, we can go this far, we can go up to this river, we can do this, we can take this much. I think now they're going to look at it, and they'll say, well, based on what's happened, we're going to have to kill all these bastards. And the whole regime is going to they got to die. I think you'll hear something, they may not come out and say it, but when missiles start landing, some people that might have otherwise not been in the wrong place at the wrong time, they find themselves sucking on a hypersonic missile. I do think that's it. Certain people may get it that might not have got it before. And the Russians are going to plod along. They're going to put their head down. Look. You ever watch a fighter? You ever watch a boxing match or a fighter or some people sparring with martial arts, right? People take hits. If you're going to get trained to defend yourself, you got to get trained to take a punch. Now, one of the things you got to get trained to take a punch. You got to understand, if you're fighting and someone has a knife, right? Knife defense, you got to understand that you might get cut. There's maybe even a good possibility that you could get cut, but you can't stop fighting and go, ouch, I'm going to stop trying to defend myself because I got cut or because I got hurt, because I took a punch, because I got hit. Oh, I got a broken rib. I can't fight anymore, or whatever, right? If you're trained to defend yourself and your life's on the line, I don't care. No matter what happens, you got to keep fighting for all you're worth. You got to learn to take a punch. I think, based historically, let's face it, this is a country that lost 30 million people. They know how to take a punch. And taking a punch, they ain't going to stop fighting because they took a punch. They're not going to give up. They're not going to turn into some angry, emotional group of people because they took a punch and then, screw the whole thing up. No, they took a punch. And if you know how to fight, you got one of the parts of fighting is, look, the other person who's attacking you, they're not going to just stand there and say, okay, hit me any way you please. They're trying to deliver some punishment to you. And you got to understand that you could swing and miss. They could land a lucky punch, a bite, kick, whatever, right? And you could get hurt. You fight on until you can flee or subdue your opponent. That's where the Russians are. I think they understood going into this. They didn't know how many punches, and now they know. And they're going to step up their game, of course, with intelligence. They're going to maybe step up their game with finding people who are involved in these kinds of things and ensuring, shall we say, that they don't plot these types of incidents anymore, however they go about doing that. But I don't see the Russians making some dramatic turn of events and doing things that will be detrimental to the outcome that they are getting closer to. So again, they're going to fight on, and they're going to crack down more, and they're going to utilize this. I think part of the thing, what they'll do is utilize this to expose really what they're up against, to expose the treachery, criminality, and terrorist mentality of their adversaries. So we'll see. We'll continue to watch what happens, but I don't look for any dramatic U-turns by the Russians. Something else before I go that's interesting, and that is, you probably know I did the Rage Against the War Machine thing a while back, right? So this is just, I haven't acted on this. I haven't called anybody, but this was interesting. So I had to, that Rage Against the War Machine was having another event, and they said, hey, Garland, we're doing this thing online, and we're going to talk about, it was like Rage Against the Deep State, but it ended up, they didn't have enough time to put it together. They said, we'll do it later on in the summer. Oh, all right, great. They said, well, we're going to do this Twitter Spaces thing, and we want you to be on. And I said, I could, except I ain't on Twitter anymore, as you probably know. And they said, okay, here we've got a Rage Against the War Machine account. Sign in there and use that to do Twitter Spaces. I said, sure. I signed in and I did this Twitter Spaces discussion, and eventually got cut off. And my one buddy who's over there says, you're off Twitter. I said, yeah. He says, look, our Rage Against the War Machine Twitter account is nothing special. He says, if you want to go on there, if you want to log in, and you want to look or use that so you can look around Twitter and research and see what's trending or whatever, feel free anytime you want to. You can, don't worry about it. Just log in. Just, if you want to tweet something minor, that's fine. Just don't go too far overboard. But, if you need to sign into the account, think nothing of it. I said, okay. And so I can see what's on Twitter. Every now and then I'll sign up. I think I've tweeted in several months 4 things, maybe 5. And then people who know me know I was tweeting all the time, every day with my account, right? So maybe 4 or 5 things I've tweeted. Nothing like for instance, I remember someone saying, yeah, what happened with Garland Nixon? He's not on Twitter. Elon Musk is going to let him. I heard he's going to let him on soon. And I tweeted something like, well, I don't think Garland's going to be back on soon for Twitter or whatever. Minor stuff, right? But small tweets here and there, nothing of any consequence. At any rate, so a couple of, but I usually go on Twitter to see what's on trend, what's trending. And if something is like the Key Bridge, I could use that account to sign in and just start looking for stuff on the Key Bridge. When I was traveling, I was like, I want to find out what's going on. So I used that account to tweet, just as like a viewer account, as a kind of anonymous lurker. I guess I was lurking on Twitter. Was that how they say online? Anyway, so I lurked as opposed to larked, right? But at any rate, so the other day I sign on and I see, maybe it was Angela McCardle or somebody say, yes, I received a notice. It might have been Angela. I think it was Angela, maybe not. Somebody who's involved in that whole thing. Something said, yes, I was notified by the FBI that a foreign intelligence agent had compromised, that one of our social media accounts had been compromised by a foreign malign adversary or something like that, right? Hostile foreign nation or something, right? And I thought to myself, I've been using that Twitter account. I wonder if I'm the hostile foreign whatever that you know what I mean? And I thought to myself, well, and somebody put on there, well, Garland does do a show for Radio Sputnik, which is Russia. And I thought, I just, who knows? I don't know anything. But I just thought to myself, I wonder if the FBI is like, oh, Garland Nixon using that account. He works for Russia. It's a hostile foreign. They're up to something clandestine. But let me just say this. If you really think about Sputnik, or I don't know anything for sure, but I wanted to relay that to you. But if you really think about Sputnik, right? Or RT, right? How could anybody ever say that I was up to something foreign and malign, right? It's not like I'm like, hey, my name's Garland Nixon, and I got nothing to do with Russia or RT or Sputnik whatsoever. I'm just a guy. I'm just an American guy. In fact, I work for the CIA. Yeah, that's it. I work for the CIA. No, like Sputnik is a Russian station, right? RT, I go on RT all the time, right? Yeah, it's a Russia Today. I think RT stands for, right? I go on Press TV sometimes. That's Iran. I've gone on CGTN. That's China. I'm not like hiding. I'm not like, hey, everybody. Yes, sir. It's Russia and China and Iran and all. I hate those guys. I never want anything to do with them. Now, let me just go on Twitter. La, 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 la. No. There's nothing, to me, for something to be maligned, there has to be some clandestine aspect of it, right? Some guy who's like, hey, I'm on, and number one. Number two, it said something like their account had been compromised. compromised. They gave me the pen. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't know for sure that it's me. I'm just speculating, okay? They gave me the username and password and said sign in, and you can use it to look around and tweet something a little bit, but try not too much, right? Which is what I've done. I've done maybe 5 tweets in like 3 months, 4 months, whatever, how many months it is, right? But whatever the case, I just thought to myself, I just felt like, why do I feel like they're talking about me? Except the problem is, what they call it, a hostile foreign government. Well, number one, I live in Maryland, so I'm not foreign, and I'm not acting on behalf of any government, although I do a show on Sputnik, but I get off at 4 p.m. So anything after 4 p.m., when I'm on the air, there's a little logo that says Radio Sputnik. So it's not like I'm trying to hide anything. There's a logo there, Radio Sputnik. Hey, Garland Nixon and Wilmer Leon on the Critical Hour. Welcome to Radio Sputnik, right? I go on RT, there's a big thing. RT with Rick Sanchez and Garland Nixon and Wilmer Leon and whoever the hell's on happens to be on a given day, right? So there's no clandestine aspect of this, right? So I don't know. Again, pure speculation. But I find it interesting that I'm lurking. I lurk on that account occasionally, and that I see someone from the libertarians or whatever saying, yeah, the FBI said that one of our social media accounts had been compromised by a hostile foreign government. But here's the other part of it. These FBI types are so brainwashed now. And if you look at what they're doing with the Uhuru people, of which might I add this, Tucker Carlson had a freaking great interview with the guy from the Uhuru movement. If you notice, I'm talking about a lot of different things. It's because I've been out, on vacation for a week, so I got plenty to say. But if you haven't seen Tucker Carlson's advertisement with, interview with Omali Yashiteli, you really ought to see it. That Tucker Carlson does some hella good interviews. He asks a question, he shuts up, and Omali Yashiteli just has you should watch it. The guy's really, really, I've interviewed him before. I've talked to him before. He's a really smart guy. He's a really good guy, and you will probably be surprised I put it like this. If you listen to Omali Yashiteli, you will understand why it is that the government hates him, that the government wants to go after the Uhuru movement. They don't like the Democrats. They're black, and they're telling the Democrats, you're being had by the Democrats. You're being stolen. You're being robbed by the Democrats. The Uhuru movement, the African People's Socialist Party, or their big thing is kind of like Malcolm X, right? Kind of like Marcus, what's his name? Bottom line is they believe in independence. What they say, what Omali Yashiteli was talking to Tucker Carlson, one of the things he was saying, look, I tell black people you need to get away from the Democratic Party. They want to basically enslave you. They want to get, as what he calls it, get them in a welfare enslavement. They want to say, hey, we're going to do this for you. We're going to do that for you. What they don't want you to do is to have independence, to get your own stuff, to get your own businesses, to work for yourself. And we're trying to move black people and say, hey, man, look, these people don't mean you any good. Screw the Republicans and the Democrats. The Democrats aren't your friends. And you need to go out and get your own. And don't ask these Democrats for anything. They're going to lie. They're not going to do anything for you anyway. Go out there, work on a business, do what you have to do, get your own, be independent, self-reliant. You don't need these damn Democrats. And when you hear Omali Yashiteli and his group talk about what they believe in, you understand why the Democrats don't want anything to do with them. That's not to say that they don't believe in a strong social safety net, but but arguing to the black community, screw the Democrats. As he said, look, they don't have to. It's not that they didn't deliver. They didn't offer you nothing in the first place. So they didn't have to deliver anything. And they want you to be dependent on them. They want you to beg from them. They ain't going to do nothing for you. You need independence and self-reliance. When you listen to what the guy says, you understand, A, he's a brilliant guy. B, that the Uhuru people have a strong position. And you understand why the ruling elite would be going after them. it makes sense when you hear him talk why they'd be going after him. I think that Tucker Carlson was pleasantly surprised when he heard this guy, and he heard how brilliant the guy was. He's a brilliant guy. So watch that interview. Get back to me. Let me know what you thought of it. Really, really good stuff. I think that's about it. So here's what I'm going to do. Let's look and see, are there any super chats? If there are, we'll answer those. I'll be back on tomorrow morning. Got to get going back again. Black in the Empire. Oh, he's great. Beat you, Garland. I live less than 10 minutes away. Wow. I'm going to find out where Black in the Empire lives, man. I'm right over Pasadena area. So that's interesting. I wonder where he is, if he's on my side. All right. If he's less than 10 minutes, I'm 12 minutes. 12 minutes. Right off Marley Neck Road. All right. Let's see. Okay. Dark Dragonov says, I bet you live in Glen Burnie. I lived in Brooklyn. Where I live is just on the Glen Burnie Pasadena line. So that's awesome. Wonderful. Yes. So, people know the area. Let's look over on Rockfin. Dave Burt, thank you very much. Dave Burt is laughing out loud. Bob Baker, thank you for a tip. JVB, thank you very much for a tip. Thanks a lot, everybody. Certainly appreciate that over on Rockfin. Also, Tom Knight, and we always get Tom. Tara, listen to me, Tom Knight. Tara, thank you very much, Tara. Knight certainly appreciates that. Let's see. Vestmana says it's illegal to express hatred on YouTube. If you do, you will go to YouTube jail. So tell the bad truths with love. Thank you very much. That's great. Let me find something else random. The African People's Party are doing great things in St. Louis, empowering the people, says Joy Duncan. Yeah, they're great. Look, the last thing the Democratic Party wants is somebody saying to Black people in America, a demographic that they need. You're being had. Let these people go, man. Move on. Look out for number one. Look out for yourself. They're lying to you. They're not going to do anything for you. And you need to move. You need to move on, and you need to, handle your own life. And bottom line is, give up. They never did anything for you, and they're never going to do for you. Do for you, and just don't even. There's no hope that the Democratic Party is ever going to do anything for you, right? If you understand that message and why they say it and how they express it, you understand why the system goes after them. Come on. Here's the African People's Socialist Party. They've been doing that stuff they've been doing since the 60s. They run somebody, which they have a constitutional right to do. They run somebody for city council and got like 2% of the vote. They ran somebody for mayor of like St. Petersburg, Florida. They got like 2% of the vote. And the FBI is going to come in and say, you're working for Putin. Really? So Vladimir Putin's big evil plan was to take over the government, starting with the county council of St. Petersburg, Florida. How stupid do we have to be to believe, not to understand what's going on here? Right? Really, we're supposed to believe that the Russians' great plan was going to start in St. Petersburg, Florida, on the county council and the mayor, a person who got 2% of the vote. That was his plan. Well, if that's Putin's plan, you don't have to worry about it. If that's the best he can do to overthrow the United States, starting in the county council of St. Petersburg, Florida, let him keep going. He ain't a threat. But it wasn't about the Russians. They accused these people who are working in poor Black communities. I know one of the things they did was they had this kitchen that they were doing. So when Black men who were in jail, formerly incarcerated people, get out of jail, they're teaching them culinary skills so they can get a job as a chef. Oh, what a terrible thing that is. You know what? What's interesting? The Democratic Party had this thing called for felons to vote. So when you get out of jail, if you're a felon in a lot of states, if you've been convicted as a felon, and nowhere in the Constitution does it say you can't vote, but they pass a lot of laws that say you can't vote. So the Democrats are saying that's unfair. Let's get felons to vote. Well, who's that benefit? Who's the benefit? You want the felons to vote. Are they going to get anything out of it? No, because they're going to vote for you, the Democrat. That's the idea. So you get more voters, and you ain't going to do a damn thing for them. Where the Uhuru movement were saying, these people need a job. These people need some skills. You're out of jail, right? Yeah. You don't have a place to stay. We'll help you find and get a place to stay. Number one, you need a job. You need some skills. Come here. We got a kitchen. We serve people. We serve the poor. We do things. We're going to teach you how to cook. We're going to teach you some culinary skills, all of the things you need to do so you can go out and get a job. See, they're looking out for poor people. They're who's looking out for the felons? They're looking out for the person that gets out of jail because they're giving them some skills and they're setting them on a path to independence. They're setting them on a path where they can feed themselves and feed their families and they can stay out of jail. The only thing the Democrats want is to get them into the voting booth so they can get their vote, and then they're going to pass laws and send their asses right back to jail. They don't give a crap. They're not going to do anything while they're in jail to teach them some skills. Then when they get out, they're not going to do anything to help them stay out of jail. They're just going to try to get them the right to vote so they can then vote for the Democrats, and the Democrats win because they get more voters. I'm not saying that I'm opposed to these people voting. Sure, I believe in the Constitution. If the Constitution doesn't say anything in it that people who are felons can't vote, well, then they should be able to vote based on whatever they want to do. Right? Great. And they should vote for the African People's Socialist Party. That's what I would argue. Vote for the people that are helping you. I'm just saying the Democrats are not doing this because they're looking out for these felons. You know why? Because they're not doing a damn thing for the felons after they get out of jail, but getting their vote and then sending them on about their way back to jail. Pass some more drug laws. Hey, you got a $5 worth of weed. Yeah, you're going back to jail, buddy. That's what they're doing. But before you do, could you stop by the voting booth and vote the Democrats back into office, and then we'll pass some more drug laws to send your ass to jail. Whereas Omali Yashitali et al. Says, come on over here. We'll help you put a roof over your head. We'll help you get some skills. We'll help you find a job. We'll help you get on the right track, because they actually have concern about those people as human beings. If you think about that, that's a reality. And they're going to say to them, these damn Democrats don't mean you. The Republicans and Democrats, these people don't need to mean you any good. Screw them. That's where the system says we can't have that, because number one, we don't necessarily get the votes from these people, and they may wake other people up to say we're sick and tired of you people doing nothing for us and getting our votes. So if you really understand who the African People's Socialist Party are, they really mean to benefit people in the poor community. And they see the damn Democratic Party and the Republican Party, of course, but the Democratic Party is the one that's reaching out to black folks. They see them for who they are. And they're saying, these people are liars. You've been schnooked by these people. Don't be schnooked anymore. And so the Democrats say, well, we got to stop this. And so now we're going to go after him, call them Russian whatevers. This man's 82 years old, for God's sake. What are you going to, the man has been working with civil rights stuff back in the 60s. He's been working with things that the poor people in the black community in 60s, 70s, and 80s. And now, all of a sudden in 2023, he wouldn't have done all of the things that he's done in these years if it hadn't been for the Russians. That is just an absolute crime to go after an 82-year-old man who's done the same thing his entire life. It's a crime what they're doing. And black Americans should learn from that, because anybody who steps off the Democratic plantation, that's what the plan that is. You don't benefit us. You're not going to bring us votes or do something for us. Screw you. You're going to get it. You're done. We got to crush you. We got to punish you. It's inexcusable. And again, as I said, certainly ideologically, I'm not aligned with Tucker Carlson, but I got a lot of respect for him. You know, I'm a lefty. I'm aligned with the Uhuru movement, but I believe in reality and the truth and good journalism. And Tucker Carlson, he does some pretty good journalism. I ain't saying it's all perfect. There's some areas where I disagree with him strongly, but he's better. At least he's talking to people about something that people want to hear, other than, you know, Russia. You know, Trump is evil, Biden's good, the crazy stuff. Don't forget, the CIA is here to protect you, you know. So, all right. Well, thanks a lot, everybody. Oh, my God, it's been a minute. Let me see if there's anything else. I think that's it. That is it. All right. Thanks a lot. Well, I will be back tomorrow morning around 9 or 10 in the morning. I'll be back in. So I'm back in, and I'm going to be doing my shows back regular. Everybody's got to take a few minutes off. So thanks a lot, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Don't forget, share this on all your social media platforms. Go to Rumble and sign up to follow me on my Rumble channel. Go to rockfin.com, ROKFIN.com. Make sure you sign up there. It costs nothing. If they throw me off of YouTube, boom, you can find me on Rumble and Rockfin. And of course, if you can afford it, Rockfin is free to sign up, but you can become a subscriber for $14.99 a month. Rockfin, if you can afford that, that would be highly appreciated. Patreon, you see that going by. Patreon, PayPal, Buy Me a Coffee, Cash App, all available. If you can help the channel, I appreciate it. If you can't, that's fine. Just share this on all your social media platforms. Thank you very much. I'm out.